She stopped laughing as she saw him dig through the anthill's dirt. She felt helpless watching him trash it. He showed her what was inside the anthill, and it changed everything for her. Saturday morning was supposed to be tranquil for Jill Bauer. She'd wake up at midday and watch a movie under a blanket. She had a bad morning. Her neighbor's yard work woke her up. But why? This Saturday morning, Jill slept very lightly. She was immediately woken up by her neighbor's yard business. He was quiet. When she looked out her window, she worried about her neighbor, not the noise. Since her neighbor moved in a few months prior, Jill knew little about him. She didn't mind his reserve. He worked from 8 to 6 and mowed his lawn on weekends, which always woke Jill up. Jill's view of his yard was unusual. Jill saw a bag delivered the day before. Was it fertilizer? She never noticed it before, but now she wondered if it was related to his Saturday morning activities. He had used some of the bag in his yard, she noticed. Jill watched her neighbor take something shiny out of his house in a bucket. It was silver but looked like liquid. It was clear it was from the bag, but he must have melted. If you like my videos, don't forget to like or subscribe. Thanks in advance. What was this liquid and what were his plans for it? She realized the liquid was aluminum after watching him. He bought an aluminum bag for his yard. But many questions remained. Why was he melting it? She would soon learn the shocking truth. His next move shocked her. He poured liquid metal into a yard anthill. Why? Was he cruel? She knew summer ants were a problem, but why not use a more humane method? She didn't know the man's true motives. Jill had to act. Not humane. They were alive, even if they were ants. She dressed, ate breakfast, and left her door for his yard. She would tell him off. Jill greeted her neighbor by peeking over the fence. He smiled and slowly approached her until he saw her temper. She told him to stop being cruel. He stared at the anthill in disbelief. He then laughed at her. He mocked her. He told her to watch his next move. He opened the anthill again. Jill's heart raced. Why was he destroying the anthill? She wasn't prepared for what she saw when he opened the dirt mound. The cooled aluminum revealed all of the anthill's tunnels. Beautiful. He smiled and told her the anthill was empty and that he made educational aluminum art in his spare time. Jill couldn't believe what he did. Jill learned that her neighbor was a local elementary school professor who liked to build and tunnel models. Pouring liquid metal into the anthill was most accurate. He always emptied them. Jill felt silly confronting the professor, but he understood and they laughed it off. He makes 18-pound casts. He said he makes them for more than his classroom. He uses them for art and insect etymology research. Jill was glad she misunderstood. Jill made her neighbor promise not to use live anthills for his casts, and he happily agreed. She said she might stop by next time he made models for a chat and coffee. Misunderstanding became friendship. Jill visited her new neighbor after a week. She felt more comfortable visiting him after building a rapport. She wanted to see his new work. She called her neighbor over the fence. As usual, he was working in the yard. He smiled and approached the fence. Jill knew Arnold Hughes was the professor. After talking to him, she saw a new side of him. Hughes took anthill art seriously. It became a passion. She knew he used them to study insects and teach his students. There was more. Hughes told Jill he wanted to do more than he was. Jill overheard him say he wanted his and sculptures to succeed. He considered himself an artist. He wanted more when he saw himself this way. He imagined his art in galleries, even if it wasn't just a few community ones. She returned inside after an hour of discussing it with Jill. His words stayed with her. She contemplated it all night and the next morning. Jill's connections were unknown to Hughes. If she wanted to, she could help him achieve his dream. Would she? Catherine, Jill's sister-in-law, had art friends. One even selected art for a community gallery. Jill considered calling but slept on it. She pondered it at work the next day. She had no idea how the art community would react to his work. After work, Jill did it. She called her sister-in-law, who was thrilled to have new talent at her exhibition. She had to talk to Hughes. Jill didn't know when he'd return. She ate on her porch. She heard his car pull into the driveway just before giving up. She heard Hughes open his backyard door. She dashed to the fence to check on him. He smoked outside. Before approaching the fence, he waved back to her. "I have good news for you," Jill said warmly. "I asked a favor, and we should be able to get your art in a gallery next week." Hughes opened wide. He smiled and took her offer. He didn't know the art critic's comments would make him cry. Hughes told Jill he would make more sculptures for the event. The dedicated man woke up early to work on his project. His pool pump had a promising abandoned anthill. Jill remembered him saying the sculpture's outcome was unknown. The true artists were the ants that made it. Hughes attempted his largest creation. He heated his usual metal and worked. Jill thought it didn't take much. She was wrong, there was more skill. Watching the anthill for activity was necessary to confirm its abandonment. Sometimes days. Thankfully, he knew it was empty. Pouring the molten metal into the hill required extreme caution. If careless, he could burn his hands. He could also smash the sculpture by breaking through the tunnels. It took effort. Hughes spent the next week making art for the showcase. He had no idea what would happen. Hughes finished his creation in a week. It was nearly finished after a week of hard work. He was pleased with his work and awaited the gallery. He called Jill to confirm arrangements after getting her number. They displayed his work on Saturday. Hughes introduced Catherine to Jill at the gallery. He displayed his art after greeting everyone. The gallery began soon. He hoped nothing went wrong. He would have avoided the gallery if he had known how the critics would react to his art. Dozens entered the art gallery. It was showtime. His ARTS reception. Hughes was smart but nervous. His work was now on display. But what happened next was unforeseeable. Hughes watched Catherine and a few critics approach his art. They studied it before talking. Catherine left after 5 minutes, shaking their hands. Catherine turned and approached Hughes. What would she say? Catherine smiled and told Hughes. "Critics love your work. They want more in the gallery. Would you display more each month?" Hughes gleamed. He even cried. He never thought his art would succeed. He could finally pursue his passion now that he had a chance. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.